This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. I'm always talking about how important it is to prepare yarn before you knit. You do not want to knit from a skein. If you take yarn from the outside of a skein, it'll roll all over the room. And if you take yarn from the inside of a skein, it'll very often be tangled. In fact, the longer yarn has been sitting in a skein, the more tangled it'll be on the inside. The solution is to rewind all your yarn before you machine knit. Remember, machine knitting uses yarn so very quickly that you cannot have knots and problems. The machine will just suck them right into the work and make quite a mess. This is a beautifully wound cone of sock yarn ready to machine knit, and I did the winding on my silver needles cone winder. You don't want any tension, and cones are great for that because the yarn flows right into the machine. Whatever tension you want to have, you get from the machine settings. You don't want it to be from tangling or friction with the yarn as it comes off the ball or cone. I will put my skein of yarn on the floor, and then I'll show you how I'm going to feed it into the cone winder. There's a clear plastic disc here, and I can put the yarn over this disc and then bring the cone in. This way the yarn will stay attached inside the cone. Give that a little push, and friction is going to make that yarn stay. Now here is the threading of the machine. This yarn, which came from the floor and is now tucked under the edge of the cone, goes into this little clip right here. This is a yarn feeder that goes up and down on this arm and causes the yarn to feed beautifully along the cone. Now, holding the yarn on the outside toward my body from the machine, I'm just going to put it through this eyelet right here, and then I'm going to bring it over here to the knot detector. The knot detector is a little spring, and I can just lay the yarn in it. It has different widths, different openings, and I'll put it here. If there's a knot, because the knot detector is connected to the on-off switch, it'll pull it off, which is nice. It'll stop almost immediately. Let's turn it on and watch that cone fill up. I really only run it a few seconds, but look at the beautiful pattern. It's a wonderful even wind on that cone. A couple of tips. First of all, if you wanted to wax your yarn, you could hold a candle or a piece of wax here and let it run over the wax. Also, you need to keep an eye on the skein of yarn or the swift, because you may have to untangle yarn coming out of the skein or coming off the skein. It just seems to me that watching the machine wind really reminds me how much I need to have the yarn rewound, because sure enough, sooner or later in any cone of yarn, it's going to run into a caught spot. And finally, one last tip. I want the open hole cones, and these have them. You need to ask for those when you buy one of these. I like that for plying yarn, and I like their cones. These are a plastic cone, and they're really a nice finish for the purpose. They weren't very expensive, so I ordered myself 10 extra cones.